Today, the story is about how I came to use AI in conflict analysis in general. So, I'm not an AI guy originally. I'm not really a coder. I'm not really an IT person, a computer scientist. I'm just a lawyer and a political scientist. And today is my story as to how I started to use AI in political science in general and more specifically in conflict analysis. And it also will, I think, serve as a way for you to understand the potential of AI in your own subject matter, in your own work, in your own interests. The lesson I think here that I would like to deliver to you is that if I, a lawyer, a political scientist who's not a computer guy, can learn to use AI in his work, so can you. So this is a story and why I think you should be considering AI in general, and why I think AI is going to be a very powerful tool in making the world a safer place. So thanks for joining me. Now, I started my PhD in 2018, and the idea was, as I started, was to basically study counter-terrorism from an angle of protecting minorities. So it was like a minority-focused counter-terrorism. Because a lot of terrorism that happens today does happen against small minorities, against certain groups that are specifically vulnerable. And that is especially true in the Middle East. And it's especially true when it comes to Islamic extremism, for example, in the Middle East in particular as well. As we can see now in Syria or in another place, basically. There's a really strong sectarian religious flavor to terrorism, especially Islamic one. And basically, this is the angle. The angle is those people who are extremists, who take advantage of religion for their own goals, for their own maybe twisted view of the world, of life. How do they frame the rhetoric? What is the way they talk? What kind of language do they use in order to attract attention and attract also supporters? Now, it is deeper than that. It's not just focusing on their speech, because in order for their speech to be effective, it must be somewhat rooted in reality. It's not like anybody can just get on YouTube and say some extremist stuff and then he will be able to start a violent organization, right? So we can easily assume that it's going to be much more complicated than that, and we can also assume that for people like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, for those people to be able to actually attract supporters and actually encourage people to give them money or to join them or even to risk and their lives for them, for their cause, then the way they speak, their rhetoric must be somewhat based on reality, okay? So the idea was, how can we study the way they speak, the kind of language they use, what are the points that they focus on, and therefore we can see how these people succeed in attracting violent players to be on their side and to actually attack and physically harm vulnerable groups. So this is basically how I started my PhD. Now, in a typical fashion, in a classical fashion, when you start a PhD, it always ends up changing. So almost it's known, anybody who has done a PhD before knows that it is most likely that your PhD will end up very different than the moment when you started it. So with time, I started applying certain theories, and the two most prominent theories in my PhD was the social identity theory and the integrated threat theory. And for me, I won't go much into detail into theory. I don't want to bore you. This could be another subject for another day. But basically, in order for me to study that, I needed to code the language myself manually using a computer program called NVivo. And basically the idea was to see, apply these two theories to the speeches of the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. His name was Ayman al-Zawahiri. I got his speeches online and I studied the speeches and I coded them using this program. So what I would do is I would read the speeches page by page and I would code them using a certain methodology. And then at the end, I will get certain results that can be quantified and be put into a very academic article, which what happened. My article was published at the journal Social Sciences in, I think, 2021. So this is how I started, okay? The coding was manual. Now, later, as I was writing this paper and I was talking to a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, he was at the same time doing a PhD in applied statistics, and he was already applying certain AI technologies onto economics and politics. And he recommended that we could do the same together, and this actually started a journey with us. And we ended up getting another person to be with us, who also became a very good friend. And what we decided to do was, I thought, if I could do the same that I did with the speeches, the transcript speeches of that Al-Qaeda leader in Iraq, maybe I could do the same with ISIS, but on a much bigger scale and using AI. And what we did is I got about almost 300 issues of ISIS newsletter Al-Naba, which is in Arabic. Now, of course, to code that manually would take a long time. So basically, it wasn't really an option to do it manually, and so it was a fantastic exercise for us to know and learn how to use AI in studying conflict in general. So we took these two theories, integrated threat theory and social identity theory, basically the same way I did it manually. I had to learn how AI works, more specifically, how does topic modeling work, which is a branch of AI technology used for research. So I did a lot of research into topic modeling. I learned how topic modeling works, what needs to be done in the research, what kind of research is using that technology. And then I collaborated with my friends to do that project. I had to get more into detail, technically speaking. We had to have a kind of a bag of words and clean it. And I had to collaborate with the AI scientist to help him make the work as accurate as possible. And the result was that we managed to analyze all these speeches, all these newsletter issues. We managed to analyze them in a very accurate manner using topic modeling. And then with the help of another co-author, we correlated that rhetoric, that the analysis of the rhetoric, we correlated that with actual attacks on the ground. Now, that turned into a very effective paper. It will be published very soon. I will tell you about it in detail when it's published. I will show it to you so you can understand a lot. But basically, in short, we managed to prove that we can use this technology to predict ISIS attacks about 6 months in advance, more in the future. Okay. Now, the idea was, then I had the idea after I finished my PhD, is that if we have a technology that's so powerful that we can actually theoretically use it to predict attacks in the future, if you merge this really powerful technology with actual subject matter experts, then the sky is the limit. If without any serious funding, just a few academics sitting together and collaborating, we could show that we can use AI rhetoric analysis to predict ISIS attacks in the future, then imagine all kinds of things that we can do with this technology with the proper funding. And what drove me to start a company is that to get the funding for that, academically speaking, is extremely difficult, very limited, and there are a lot of obstacles that are put in your way before you can do a project like that, a lot of paperwork, and then even after all that work, the possibility of getting funding is very limited. So I decided that, well, I might as well start a company. This way I can hit a few birds with one stone. I can learn how to do business. I can actually test my ideas on the ground and see if people are willing to pay for it. And then if I can find funding for it, the real bottleneck was the funding. If the funding is there and we can afford to pay for the compute and pay for the experts and get them there full time, then the sky is the limit. And that's basically the starting journey of my startup, BrainBridge Solutions. Okay, so this is how we started, and now we got funding from Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, which is a very prestigious think tank in Germany. They are funding organization as well. They're extremely prestigious, and I'm very proud to be collaborating with them and getting support from them. So this is, in short, the story of why I decided to use AI in conflict analysis and how I came to use it, learning that there are better solutions, better alternatives to do this kind of research, and also learning that we have a very powerful technology that people nowadays mainly associated with chatbots like ChatGPT or with image generation or to make memes or something like that. But for me, I think it's something that we can really use it to make the world a safer place, to be actually able to predict attacks and to analyze conflict much more effectively. So this is the starting story of the company, and this is my idea behind it. I hope you like it. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments below. And next time, hopefully, I will show you my paper along with my co-authors, and hopefully it will be published, and then I will show it to you in more detail, a paper about how to actually predict ISIS attacks using AI. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.